Does the date October 2nd mean anything to any of you? Other than the fact that it's a dry day. Don't worry, this is not a political story. I mean, I know you all know that it was the date that Mahatma Gandhi was born, but what you don't know is that it was also the date that my grandfather was born. And he was one of the people that I loved the most in my life. So don't worry, this is not a political story. This is a human story. My Nana Kailash Lamba was born in 1928. It was in a place called Bahawalpur. It's a small village just off the Jhelum River in Punjab. Well, I mean, now Pakistan, but then Punjab. In 1940, his parents moved him, his 3 brothers and 2 sisters to Lahore. That's where they grew up. They spent their summers in Shimla, where the family had a restaurant called Quality, which they decided to spell with a K. Do you guys remember those ice cream carts that some of you may have grown up around with the blue and white stripes? Yeah. So that was once a restaurant in Shimla, and apparently a pretty good one, because when Gandhi and Nehru and Sardar Patel used to have their summer meets at the Viceregal Lodge in Simla, my Nana was the deputed delivery boy to take packed lunches to them. And his most unfulfilled dream was that he never got to tell Gandhi that, hey, we share the same birthday. So Shimla was obviously a very fun and exciting time for him, but Lahore was his home. And I grew up listening to stories about it. So I began to pester him, that you have to take me there one day. And he said, yeah, maybe I will. Maybe on your birthday. Many birthdays came and went. And then finally, on my last birthday, when I lay with him, holding his hand as he was unconscious in the ICU, fighting for his life, I said to him, Nana, I know you're not fighting for your life. I know you're fighting for just one more day. Because you don't want my birthday to be about the day you go. But just know this, that if you do go, I will be celebrating your life for the rest of mine. We lost him 2 hours later. And I promised myself that one day I will go to Lahore, hopefully on my birthday, and I will celebrate his life. Because Lahore was the first city that he called home. And it was a city that I knew in my blood and in my bones that I would know it as home. Lahore was where he grew up. It was where he went through boyhood, had his first crush, never told that crush that she was his crush. Where he went to high school, and he started college. I say he started college because in his final year, the partition happened, and then the family got into a car. They drove from Lahore to Amritsar for about 5 hours, stopped there for a few days, and then finally came down to Delhi. Delhi was the new home. It's where I was born, where my mother was born. Delhi was where he started his next chapter. It's where he met the love of his life. Well, no. Actually, he saw the love of his life at his cousin's wedding, and then he went on to arrange an arranged marriage with her. Because he knew that that was the only way that he could get to be with her. Until his last day, he could describe the exact shade of midnight blue of the sari that she was wearing that day. And any time that he was with me and he ever saw a sofa or a curtain and there was something of that shade of blue, he would look at me and say, Ishu, pata hai, kammi ne na, oi rang di sari pehni si. He wasn't a very scholarly man. Not their romance, their romance could have put a Marquez novel to shame. They were married 62 years and in love for 63. Obviously, when they started, they didn't have much. Quality with a K was sold off. And he eventually got into carpentry. He discovered that he liked building things. And he could look at the most complicated piece of furniture, memorize it, and replicate it again the next day. He worked hard, set up many furniture factories, and eventually moved on to become a very, very rich man. But the more money he made, the less this money would mean to him. Because he was basically a simple man at heart. And he used to always say to me, you know what, Ishu? I am filthy rich in love. And it was true. He loved my Nani so much, and Nani loved her saris. So when she ran out of space, he built a 21-foot walk-in closet for her. Do you even know what that means? 21 feet? That's 18 shutter doors. 18. But for himself, he just had one cupboard. Because he used to always say, Mainu ki chahiye yaar. I just need 2 trousers. They traveled the whole world together. And he would always come back with these stories about, phir se kammi ne luggage allowance exceed kar li. But it was okay. Because all he needed was 2 trousers. And just like that, he had these key catchphrases for everything. And they were always very similar, just like 2 trousers. You know, they were simple, short, succinct. Like the most common one. Ki fark penda hai? That's Punjabi for, what difference does it make? When his first factory burned down, the entire family was in an utter state of distress, and rightly so. But when we looked at him, he just shrugged and smiled and said, Ki fark penda hai? Ek baar khadi kari thi, दूजी बार खड़ी कर लेंगे. And he moved on to tell us a story about how when he first came from Lahore, he built this whole thing out of nothing. And surely, if he could build this out of nothing, it would be easier to rebuild it again out of something. I mean, after all, he was the guy with 2 trousers. The second one, and my favorite. Kahin naal le jana hai kya? That basically means, am I going to take it with me when I go? One time, I saw him cut a check for 10 lakhs and just hand it over to Jairam, his chief carpenter, whose daughter was getting married. And I felt very bad when I looked at that sum of money, because I said, shit, Nana. It's going to take him his entire life to pay you back. He just looked at me and he goes, pay me back? Tu pagal ho gayi hai kya? Odi kudi da byah hai. And then he went on to tell me about how Jairam was one of the first carpenters to join him when he first came from Lahore, when he had nothing to pay him. How Jairam had worked with him loyally by his side for 50 years, and how he was one of the carpenters who had built the mandap for my mother, Geetu's wedding. Pay me back. Sati aa gayi hai. The third one. Kal thodi na yaad rahega. Are you going to remember it tomorrow? One time, and not very long ago, he went into the shower, and when he was coming out, the shower cage door got unhinged, and the glass fell, shattered on him. It almost slashed his wrist, almost killed him, and the whole house was in an utter state of hysteria. We were howling and rushing and pushing him into the ambulance, and he just kept smiling, and I was like, Nana, stop it! Stop smiling all the time. Why are you always smiling? And after he came out of that surgery, he sat there, still smiling through his bandages, and said, Chhadna Ishu. Kal thodi na yaad rahega. And he told me a story about how many glass windows he and his brothers broke while they played cricket outside their house in Lahore. And their broken things don't always get fixed. So sometimes they're just best forgotten. Sooner or later, I began to notice something. I began to notice that Lahore was always there in his stories, always peeking out through the furniture. It was like a ghost that was pleading to not be forgotten. So I decided to ask him about it. I said, Nana, tell me about the day you left. I mean, I know all your stories before and I know your stories after, but I don't know anything about the day you left. And I waited for one of his key catchphrases to show up, and all he said was, कुछ याद ही नहीं आंदा कुछ याद नहीं आंदा पर तुहानू से सब कुछ याद रहंदा है हाँ 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 पता है इशू लेकिन पता नहीं याद ही नहीं आंदा. This didn't make sense to me. How could he forget? How could a man that remembered the exact shade of midnight blue have forgotten the most important day of his life? I mean, there was everything. There was life before Lahore, there was life after it, but everything in between was just a void. It was like a page had been torn out of a book. I knew there were others there, so I started to ask the others about it. And the new storytellers had new memories. And the new memories gave way to new histories. Because as we all know, the present does a very good job of changing the past. He said, when we left Lahore, but they said, when we fled from Lahore. He said, we drove 5 hours from Lahore to Amritsar. But they said, we ran to the car, we ripped out the black seats, we took the carpet, the only carpet we could take from the house, and we rolled it out so we could all lie down flat and hide. पहले स्वर्ण और रवेली को माते के साथ भेजो। कैलाश, तू जगदीश और हरीश के साथ पीछे आ। बड़े भाई साहब, आप गाड़ी क्यों नहीं चला रहे हैं? And they lay in the back of that car, absolutely still, not knowing if the footsteps that they were listening to were coming towards them or running away from them. And the only times that they allowed themselves to look out the window and up at the sky was when Bade Bhai Sahab got their car safely across the border at Amritsar. He said, I finished college in Delhi. But they said, Kailash ne to Delhi mein social work kiya tha na? Because when he came from Amritsar to Delhi, no college would accept him. And he found a way to convert his degree via social work by sitting on a desk in Connaught Place and filling out the forms for the other refugees, the ones who didn't know how to read or write. And that's when I realized that moving house is very different from leaving home. And that home for him was always going to be a feeling that was adulterated by everything that was the opposite of home. And that broken things don't actually get fixed. So sometimes they're just best to be forgotten. The last question I had was for Nani. I said, वो carpet तक ही हुआ? She says, पता नहीं, फेंक दिया होगा, कहाँ रखते? I mean, they came with so little. Or Nana? What did he come with? She looks at me and says, 2 trousers. But like I said, don't worry. This is not a political story. This is a human story. And thank you for listening.
I love commune and commune loves me. We're a happy family. So you can do the same by liking, sharing and subscribing. And you can press the bell icon somewhere there. Here?